who was performing on Diddy TV tonight, and we want to have a session with her and learn a little bit more about Mila Smith. But first, let's have a round of applause. She was fantastic, right?
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was fun.
So Mila, tell me a little bit about how you got started in music and maybe your first gig and how that really shaped you.
Okay. Started in music. Well, I always tell people that I've been singing since I could learn to talk, pretty much. I think my parents can attest to that. I think the joke, my mom said that she brought me, I wore out 2 separate Fisher-Price tape recorders that you could, record yourself into, and just with my stream of consciousness songs that I was making up. But it's just everything I saw, singing about it. But so I feel like music is one of those things that people that love music and want to do music just kind of have it there. It's just there, and you can't really explain it where this music is from.
You're driven to do that.
Yeah, you're just driven. I mean, I really can't remember a time that I didn't love music and want to do it. And I've talked to other people that are artists and other people that are musicians, and they all feel the same way too. It's like you can't not do it. So my whole life has sort of been a story of, okay, how am I going to find a way to do this? Because I have to do it. It wasn't a way of if I'm going to do it, it was how am I going to work it into my life and do it. So.
And I know you have a practical side to yourself.
Yes, I do.
And so there was a side of you that said, hey, I
Right.
can't just go and do this. I need to have another profession because I'm not sure if I can make this work.
To have a strong foundation of education and, something an employable skill.
Right.
So I worked, I took that very seriously, and it's just tough because, like I said, when you're driven to do music, you've got to do it somehow, but, dealing with the realities of, a lot of people in the music business are unemployed or they don't, they're just scraping by, and so I did have that other side of me, that was pulling me in another direction, kind of saying, okay, be smart, be practical, and I really love where I am right now in my career because I feel like I've finally struck a balance that feels right, and I don't feel like I'm making any sacrifices anymore.
Right.
So it feels really good. But going back to your first question about my gig, the first gig that I ever had.
How was that?
Well, okay, so when you're driven to do music and you have this, desire even as a child, I was always begging my parents, let me try out for this, take me to this, and, anything I heard about. And we were living in Dallas at the time, and I had done something in a Christmas play at church, and the choir director had told me about some friends of his that he was like, hey, they're looking for some kids to come and audition to do this TV show. I'd love for you to go do it. So, of course, I was like, yes, please take me, let's do it. So I went and auditioned for them, and it happened to be that they were casting for this show called Barney and Friends that was on PBS, which ended up getting picked up and running for years on PBS. So I had no idea at the time, nobody knew anything about it. It was just like, it's a show about a purple dinosaur and, uses imagination. And
Every 2-year-old seen that show.
Right, right. So, but I definitely,
and every parent.
We were just, I got cast with, they needed kids to sing for them, so I was a casting.
And you raised your hand?
I was like, yes, me, I'll do it. So it was great. I always joke that was the best job I ever had because, it was just so cool. You got to go sing and do music, and they paid you a lot of money.
Hey, that is a great gig for any musician, right?
But it was pretty cool. So I know all the Barney secrets.
So in 2006, you released your first CD.
Right, my first CD of original music.
What was the experience like making that first CD and creating your own music and seeing that come to fruition?
Really scary, because what you don't think about when you're doing that kind of thing is that it does live on forever. Like you are, when you record something, it really does. It's out there.
And at that point in your life, it's whatever was experiencing.
Right.
Whatever you were experiencing at that point in your life, that's what you put out there.
That's what you're putting out there. That's what you're writing about. And And your first record, you know, you're so green. I didn't know anything about, I didn't know how to make a record. I knew, you know, hear my songs, and then, you know, there was no path in my mind. I couldn't see it. So anyway, learned a lot doing that first one. But
what was it like being in the studio?
Well, that was easy because, you know, having done Barney for
right,
so many years, you know, we were in the studio all the time.
You were experienced at that point, right?
It's always a learning experience.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And so how would you describe your music? And along those lines, what artists has sort of influenced you along the way?
Gosh. I mean, I love folk music, so, you know, when I was a teenager, I sort of went back through the whole, like, 70s folk catalog, you know, just listening to all those great singer-songwriters. And, like, Cat Stevens and James Taylor. And
love Cat Stevens.
Yeah, I do, too. I love his, like, raw energy. Like, so much of his stuff is just, like, so strong in this really raw way, which really was cool to me. And then, you know, when I started writing songs more, I was, you know, musical taste change and stuff. I started listening to Ryan Adams. I had a big Sheryl Crow phase because I just thought she looked so cool playing bass and singing at the same time.
I think Sheryl Crow is
She's so cool.
Very cool.
Yes, she is so cool. And also she's sort of like from the same area I was from and, you know, had similar... I just looked up to her a lot being somebody that came from a totally different field of study. Like she was a school teacher first, and you know, then she went and started doing music and singing backup for people, and really just made her path. And
so in a way similar to you,
cool.
which is
Yeah.
you had a professional career and you're trying to make that transition into music.
Right. Yeah. So I really respected her for forging, you know, a similar path, and just thought it was really cool.
So in 2010, you put out another CD, and what was the name of the CD?
White Gold.
White Gold, that's right.
It was a double EP that we released. I say we because that was around the time that I met Richard Thomas, who's my husband now.
I think you fell in love, right? And
yes.
then you're producing a CD, and you're in love, and you're getting married, and the whole bit, right?
It was really... I would not really recommend what we did for other people because if you're planning a wedding, we started recording White Gold when we got engaged, pretty much like a week or two afterward. And if anybody knows what it's like to plan a wedding, it's already pretty crazy and stressful, and you go through it's like an emotional roller coaster.
Right.
So then trying to complete a record on top of that, you know, and everything that goes into just like, you know, that is a very like forcefully created thing. You have to just, it's persistence of making everything come out the exact way you want it to, when you need it to, and organizing and delegating and coordinating with all these different pieces and parts. So we were doing both at the same time, and that was, I mean, I definitely had more than one or two emotional breakdowns during the process, but what ended up being, the reason I would not trade it is because it was so cool. We started doing the record when I got engaged, and we released the record when we got married on our wedding day.
Oh, that's great.
So
what a great wedding gift.
Yeah, we actually gave out copies to our people
Attendees.
At our reception.
Yeah, that's great.
So it was something that I, you know, was working with completely different people. I had also had 4 more years of doing this.
Life experience.
Yeah, life experience, and also just musical experience, kind of playing with a band.
Sure.
Figuring out, like, how do I kind of want these songs to sound, and figuring out what my sound is. So when you go back and...
Did you feel like as a songwriter, your method and your process was changing, or how you wrote a song?
I think that it was improving. I definitely feel like I was tightening up some of my songwriting. I feel like, you know, when you're a young songwriter, you write very introspectively. Everything is sort of like, it's just really about your own personal experience. On White Gold, I started looking out a lot more and writing about my friends' experiences and what other people were going through, and other people's stories. And I feel like that's a real sign of like maturity. I mean, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back or something, but you know, that it just is when you start telling other people's stories and not just your
absolutely.
own. So you know, that was another piece of white gold. And then just